Swarthmore, where you can't hide.
Oh yeah.
You fund genocide. Swarthmore, you can't hide. You fund genocide.
Overall, when I think about my time at Swarthmore College as an honestly forced student activist, I think about nights with Fly Council in LASE, SAF, and SJP. I think about the times that Fly, Black, Brown, Indigenous, and oppressed students finally found the strength, the courage, and the time to cry out for help. Year after year, 1969, 1989, 2013, 2020, 2023, 2024, and cohort after cohort, there have been demands, calls to actions, tears, rallies, sit-ins, begging, and desperation. So I had to ask myself why I keep expecting orange juice to come out of the water fountain when all that is coming out is vile, spineless, selfish, apathetic, toxic waste. The answer had always been right in front of my face because the answer was always the individuals, especially the alumni that have guided and shaped me. Swarthmore's Ancestral Gold.
I'm Karen Henry. I'm the Dean of First Year Students and Director of the First Gen Low Income Student Initiatives on campus. And I'm also a SWAT alum. I graduated in 1987. I was very active in SAS, doing a variety of the leadership roles there. I also had a stepbrother who was here at the same time I was here as a student, and there was an incident where public safety and the police came in and took him out of the dining center because he matched the description of somebody who had done something on campus. So I remember a lot of activism around that incident, particularly for Black students at that time. Another bigger issue was the divestment from South Africa. A good number of my friends did a sit-in in the president's office. I actually didn't do a sit-in in the president's office, but a number of my closest friends were involved in that sit-in.
Although the college had endorsed the Sullivan Principles since 1978, and had in 1983 sold its 6,000 shares in one company for its unwillingness to adhere to them, debate still existed on whether to support full divestment from all companies. The debate intensified in 1984 with the formation of a board committee on ethics and investment, which deliberated for more than a year but could not reach consensus. Frustrated by the slow pace of subsequent meetings and committees on the issue, students held a day-long sit-in in December 1985 in the doorway of the admissions office. They also interrupted a board meeting later that month, and the next week staged a 9-day sit-in in President Fraser's office. On September 9, 1985, members of SAAC, partnering with the recently formed Swarthmore College Divestment Coalition, slept on the porch of Parish Hall, the college's administrative building, to start off a vigil that would last until the September 28th board meeting. The vigil was in protest of the college's investment policy regarding South Africa, to educate students about the college's investment policy in apartheid, and to call for the complete divestment of all corporations with interests in South Africa. Students rotated shifts of occupying the porch, hosted nightly discussions and talks by professors, and gave red armbands to passersby. The Friday night before the board meeting, a group of 500 students, including students from nearby Haverford College and Bryn Mawr College, slept outside on the lawn in front of Parish Hall, culminating in a candlelight vigil and a human ring around the meeting house where the board meeting was taking place. On October 7th, 35 students staged a sit-in in the admissions office in Parish Hall to protest the board's decision. The students carried picket signs, sang, presented a 3-year divestment plan, and distributed leaflets to prospective students encouraging them to tell the administration the importance of divestment in their college decision. Deeming this measure inadequate, 70 students marched into the Board of Managers meeting on December 7th wearing red armbands and singing. The board meeting was adjourned until the students left. From December 11th to the 19th, 50 students took turns occupying the college president's office. They called for complete divestment, in addition to a more active recruitment of Black students and professors on the part of the college. On March 1st, 1986, students staged a die-in on the lawn outside of where the Board of Managers was to meet. In March of 1989, the Board of Managers set forth a plan for complete divestment by 1990. They followed through with their promise and maintained divestment for many years.
My name is Maria Jaqueline Evans. So I took an extra semester. So my official class is 2013, but I did an extra fall, I think, and graduated with 2014. Now I am a translator. I translate from Russian and Portuguese into English. I was going through and looking for stuff. I even wrote this thing. I don't remember where it was published, but I found my Google Doc of it, called "The Extra Class, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Time I Spent Reading the Daily Gazette." I wrote it after I graduated, sort of thinking back on like activism and stuff on campus is kind of like an extra class. It's teaching you how to like make change in the microcosm, to be able to do stuff outside of Swarthmore. I don't know if it's still the case, but it was definitely the case that a lot of people spent a lot of time making themselves feel constantly like they're wasting time and worrying about, not doing enough work. And so like I found that reframing it as an integral part of what I was doing at Swarthmore was really helpful to me to make myself feel less anxious. And I also talk about that, and I kind of regret how long it took me to have the sort of rose-colored glasses shaken off of my face about Swarthmore and about administration as an institution, and sort of what their goals are, as opposed to what they I'm going to say the word pretend, but like what they pretend Swarthmore is. I just also wasn't as active as I wish I had been. I went in and I was just like, I thought my job was to be a student, and I didn't know enough about a lot of things. And so like there would be like these awesome activist students with all these like very, very strong positions and statements, and I was like, I don't know what to think. Like this is going against the very like I think it's also a tendency in general for Swarthmore students, because if you get in, you're high achieving, and one of the ways to be high achieving is to be really, really, really like goody two shoes, and like scared of authority slash like like whatever. And like I was such a good kid in school that it took me, and I'm still working, I call it like exercising my rule breaking muscle. Like I sometimes just like break rules for the sake of practicing breaking rules, because I did not know how to break rules. And if you don't know how to break rules, and somebody tells you this is against the rules, like you want to change the rule, and it's like sometimes in order to change the rule you have to break the rule first over and over and over until the rule sort of gets broken by default, and they change it because of that. And so like I was not, yeah, I wish I had been more active when I was at SWAT, because it's a good place to practice things. I was certainly not. I was a bit more involved in some of the like survivor groups on campus, because I had multiple friends who were assaulted on campus, and I was assaulted off campus. And so like that was probably where I did most stuff. But even there I was more like supporting the group, not like doing anything dramatic or helpful overall. I really didn't take advantage of the opportunity, although like I learned a lot from the more radicalized people who really understood how you can't, like, how much is BS essentially.
So I'm Brandon Aquano. I also go by Frames. So most people on campus call me Frames. Most people in my life call me Frames. I was class of 2020. I came in 2016, and I graduated from home because my senior spring was kind of cut in half when we entered that quarantine when the pandemic began. I was a double major in Black Studies and Computer Science at SWAT. I say like my Black Studies courses, always loved them, always felt great in them and stuff like that. 90% of the time. My comp sci courses, it was tough as hell. They could have flunked me out. And I only mention that because I think that's a big part of what my experience was at SWAT, especially being a Black student from a low income background, someone who did like do well academically throughout my life. Even when it came to like STEM stuff, I was pretty good at it. But I was a programming intern, so I helped with event programming, as well as just being around the house and interacting with all the student groups that were based in the Black Cultural Center. And then speaking of those student groups, I was a regular member of SAS, a very active participant all my 4 years. I was heavily involved in SASA as well. And then I was also in the coalition. So at some point, I want to say it was during my sophomore year, my friend Lydia had kind of tapped me and my friend Josie Hung. We were really fit to like pick back up this thing called the coalition. Lyd explained what the coalition was, the need for it. You know, we understood it. I think Lydia was reaching out to us because we were heavily involved in things going on in campus and especially with the centers and stuff like that. And so Josie and I picked it up and we started that up. And I guess I'll stop there since I know you're gonna have questions, but that's me as SWAT, I guess.
I don't know that I would have called myself a student activist last year or even the year before either. But similar to you, for me, Fly Council spring break, it was seeing my community, seeing the Fly community gather around, hey, like Fly students are at jeopardy here. Like they're not paying for our flights home. They're not guaranteeing us summer storage. They're not talking about if they can get us back to campus or how we could even stay on campus. And so like I remember, Ella and Murtaza and others like leading while we were on vacation, right? Like while we were on our spring break, I remember them in the basement of our Airbnb calling all students that were like mentally able and like, capable to come down and write this letter to the college that like you need to be mindful of Fly students and you need to be communicating with us going into this pandemic. And for recent things, in terms of why I call myself a student activist now, it was SJP and it was seeing Arab Fly students, seeing Black and Brown Fly students, seeing Muslim Fly students being persecuted for saying they're uncomfortable on campus and saying like the things that this at Swarthmore is doing, it doesn't align with their values. Seeing them be like disciplinary punished, similar in a way of stripping financial aid if you're academically not doing well, really made me understand that there is no Fly community unless I'm out there trying to protect everybody. And so recognizing the most vulnerable.
But at whose expense, ultimately, right? Ultimately, I think it's the students, the community members, the staff members, the faculty who are part of this community that make this community. We are the community, right? It's not these buildings that are Swarthmore. We are Swarthmore. Right?
I feel like we were having the same exact discussions about a need to build our own memory outside of the institution. Because I don't feel like a lot of stuff got passed down. I feel like there were so many things that we learned only because the coalition rose back up again, or came into being again. That was only when we started to learn things and we started to get in touch with a couple of alumni here and there. We started to hear stories or find a little information about something. It's like, it's students on campus who are just struggling and working so hard. And like you was just talking about, getting burnt the fuck out, just trying to like advocate for themselves and for the, fellow students, all while trying to like, pass their classes. And everybody didn't succeed at that. People dropped out, fell off, because they could, you know what I mean? Because it's tough. It's an environment that, is not built for us at all and does not work to support us. It's like as soon as we struggle, it feels like support starts to lessen in ways, and it's like, so yeah, I feel like there was a huge lack of institutional memory. One of those moments for me was definitely through the coalition. I remember pretty early on in the stuff that we're doing with the coalition. And I want to say, I remember me and Josie, we wanted to be as facilitators, co-facilitators, and this continued through as well when Alexis joined us, when Timby joined us. We wanted to create a channel like for the student groups to interact with each other more, particularly the affinity groups that were bringing together students who were bonding around like shared experiences, usually with identity, yeah, you know, we we should all, I feel like we should all really have an equitable access to the funding that is made available for student groups to use. And it was just so like, it just felt so, it was sad, you know, it was like sad to hear like how much we were all getting slighted as student groups that were based around like our identities, oppressed peoples. Like we come from oppressed peoples around this earth, you know, and it's like we have our student groups based around those identities so we can, you know, find affinity with each other, right? And we're getting these like poo-poo doo-doo shit budgets. While you know what I mean? We got like, I don't know, the violin club over there is getting like $15,000 a year to buy a brand new violin for each member every fucking semester or whatever. And it's like that's a made up example, but it was like it was really foul. We organized this action on SGO, and we came in and we joined the SGO, you know, meeting, which are generally open to all students. And you know, they say that they announce that to students and that people know that all the time. But you know, I'm like, you really don't really know, or maybe you really care, give a fuck, unless you're like your best friend is an SGO, I guess. I don't know. But we went to the meeting and they knew exactly why a whole bunch of students from these various affinity groups stepped into the meeting, or if they didn't know, they knew it wasn't for a good reason. And so they start like filibustering the meeting and stuff and just talking about they not really filibustering, but they doing something similar where they just like talking about a bunch of shit that's just clearly not as important or significant as the reason why 20 or 30 students who never normally ever come to SGO meetings came in and walked in at the same time and sat in the room. We kind of just like disrupted whatever conversation they was having about whatever they was talking about. That was all bureaucratic and stuff like that. And we started voicing these concerns and we presented a list of demands. That in and of itself was just like, it was a moment full of, and I'm speaking for myself, but you know, I'm sure so many of the people who were there would like feel the same. Like it was like a high anxiety moment as well, because it really felt like we are like vulnerable. We are very vulnerable. And this is not like the most vulnerable you can be in life, but just in the context of SWAT, it felt like such a vulnerable moment. And it felt like something that was just like, you know, confrontational in a very serious way. But it also just felt so cathartic and so like, you know, it just felt like, damn, like it feels good to finally be like not just venting to each other about how much we're being fucked over, but actually talking directly to some of the folks who are complicit and involved in fucking us over so regularly for generations. You know, we feeling this, we carrying this from the alumni who passed down the student groups to us. You know, it was like, you know, it felt really good. And it also led to just a different practice of like, it just, for me personally, it just was like, it was a wake up, you know, and it was just like, yo, speak the fuck up because they're not, they playing with us, you know, and they will continue to play with us and they'll always play with us. And those were students. And that's sad, you know. Those are students. We're not even talking about that. We're not talking about the deans and the president and some of the faculty. We're talking about other students who are taking advantage of us. And it's like that's you know that's I don't know, you know. So it was cool. It was that.
I don't think it's practical to try to tackle all of those issues separately, sort of. I don't think that, I think sometimes you have to just sort of be like, there's a whole bunch of shit going on in campus that is not working. We need to fix a whole bunch of stuff and like do that at once. And like, maybe you won't feel 100% comfortable signing on to the petition because there's 2 sentences in there because that you don't quite completely agree with. And that's something else that you have to sit back and think about, like, but what is your point? Like, what is the point of the petition? What are you saying when you're signing it? It doesn't mean that you agree with every single fucking comma. It just means that you want this to move forward, that this is the direction that you want the discussion to go in. And I think that, did I always completely agree with everything that people were proposing and stuff? No. But I knew that what was happening at the time was not the correct, like the status quo was terrible. And I think that like all of the objections that people had would have been beautifully resolved if we had had bigger campus-wide discussions about all of those things and really worked through the nitty-gritty of the stuff that people disagreed with. I think that I was too conservative. Like I thought that like big things couldn't happen. So like a lot of the things I was looking at kind of small scale incremental change stuff that now I'm like, the thing about incremental change is that they'll only let through the things that don't actually allow change. So you have to shake things up at a much bigger scale than I was thinking. And honestly, I think I want students to take, and I mean that with as much like visual that goes along with it. I want them to take as much control of how this college is run as possible, because I think that it's only like that's the only way that the college is going to be flexible enough, like because students are flexible because they're all coming in, because that is the advantage of a whole bunch of new people coming in constantly, is that they're all coming in with the ability to look at things with new eyes.
Behind the ivory gates, there were systemic monsters ready to let me die if I did not withstand their tests. I was supposed to find appreciation for the fact that Swarthmore College allowed me in, that it fed me, and that it was supposedly making me stronger. I was to pretend as if they weren't stealing my labor, teaching me to fear our future and instigating anxiety attacks, depressive episodes, and suicidal ideation. Too often, I forgot myself that Swarthmore College did not give me my strength. They did. Each and every one of them, and so many more, day after day, year after year. I told myself I would not let the monsters take them away, nor take me away from them, and I didn't. I resisted and looked towards them each and every day. I survived, and so will you.